couple weeks ago, Pixar released their new film Turning Red on Disney+. So here's my ranking of all 25 Pixar films from the worst to the best. Number 25, Turning Red, a movie way too mature for its target audience. Now, Pixar has dealt with mature subject matter before in their other films, but it was handled in a way that was appropriate for all ages. In this film, it's very clearly aimed at teenagers who are just starting puberty, and there's a lot of talk about things like periods and tampons in a Pixar movie. That's not what we want. Besides the bizarre way it talks about certain subjects, the main character just isn't that interesting. The film actively encourages rebellion against parents. The film moves way too quickly and has way too frenetic of an energy to it. And at the end of the day, it just feels like a lesser version of Teen Wolf mixed with the Incredible Hulk. Number 24, A Bug's Life. One of the most mean-spirited and ugly-looking films Pixar has ever put out. The whole film is very cynical and doesn't have the charm that Toy Story had before this, and the plot is just a direct ripoff of the Three Amigos. Number 23, Wali. A movie about an evil corporation that destroyed the Earth, put out by Disney, which is proof that they have no self-awareness. Honestly, I just find this movie boring. The love story between the two robots is very cute, and there are some fun moments with Wall-E and some of the mischief he gets into, but after the first 30 minutes or so, I lose interest. Because after those first 30 minutes, it just directly rips off 2001: Space Odyssey. The movie just doesn't feel as creative as Pixar's other films, and its message is very heavy-handed. Number 22, Cars 2, a movie that should be fun with the idea of Lightning McQueen doing a worldwide racing tournament, but then you get this bizarre plot line about Mater being mistaken for a spy, which is what most of the film focuses on. Mater is okay in moderation, but making him the main character of this film was a bad idea because he quickly becomes annoying. On top of that, there's scenes of gun violence and a part where a spy car is tortured to death, and yet this movie still somehow got a G rating, even though if it were humans in this movie, it would probably be rated R. Very bizarre choices throughout this film. Number 21, Cars. A movie that only exists because John Lasseter, who was the CEO of Pixar at the time, went on a road trip and fell in love with a certain area of California and wanted to make a movie about it. That's fine if you want to tell a more personal story, but the execution isn't that great. The main character isn't very likable, the plot isn't that interesting, and there's not really any reason for these characters to be cars. If the characters were humans, it would probably feel like the same movie. As far as the lower end of the Pixar movies go, it's one of the more watchable ones, but it's not going to be my first choice. Number 20, Brave, a movie that directly rips off Brother Bear so much that it might as well be called Mother Bear. It feels like Pixar was trying to do a princess movie and do something different with it, but the way they do it isn't as clever as, say, Tangled, Frozen, or Enchanted. I just don't find this movie all that entertaining. Number 19, The Good Dinosaur. It has gorgeous animation, but that's it. The plot is dumb, it's not an interesting movie, and the reason for that is because it was changed so drastically during production. Directors and writers kept leaving the project, so Pixar eventually just decided, we're spending way too much money on this movie, let's just put it out. We can't afford to keep rehiring writers and directors, let's just put out what we have right now, it's good enough, and it feels very lazy by Pixar standards. Number 18, Finding Dory. An unnecessary sequel to Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo ended so perfectly, there's no need for the story to continue, but they did anyway, and it's not that great. It doesn't have as much heart to it as the original, it isn't as interesting. In some ways, it feels like one of those direct-to-video sequels Disney put out in the 90s and 2000s, and the movie is very forgettable. 17, Cars 3. After the absolutely off-the-rails Cars 2, the third film finally gets back to the roots of the racing aspect. This is definitely the most mature Cars film, with themes of accepting getting older and making way for the new generation. It's a very loving tribute to Paul Newman, who passed away shortly after the first Cars film was released, but what irks me is the ending. It has the laziest possible ending they could have come up with. Number 16, Onward, a movie whose concept should have been better executed. You got Tom Holland and Chris Pratt in the lead roles who work very well off of each other, but the plot is just a boring road trip movie that doesn't have as much heart as other Pixar films, and the jokes all feel stolen from Shrek. Number 15, Luca, a low-stakes, boring movie with a done-to-death message that doesn't have anything new to say. The animation is certainly very different from other Pixar films, and I applaud them for that, but the plot just revolves around the two main characters trying to win a bike. That's it. Those are the stakes. That's the conflict. It's not that riveting. And the message of, don't be scared by the monster because they could be your friend, has been done in Beauty and the Beast, Shrek, Hotel Transylvania, Monsters vs. Aliens, so it just feels very repetitive. Number 14, Monsters University. A movie that has some fun to it, but is still one of the more forgettable Pixar movies. Compared to the original, it doesn't have as much heart or depth to it, the story isn't as clever or creative, and it just doesn't leave as big of an impact as the original. Number 13, Incredibles 2. A very disappointing sequel, especially because it took almost 15 years to come out. And in all that time, the best story they could come up with was essentially an Elastigirl spin-off film. Instead of expanding on the ideas of a superhero family and then working together to save the world, all the ideas and character development of the first film take a back seat just to make Elastigirl the main character. Number 12, Toy Story. A classic movie that totally changed animation and filmmaking forever. At its core, it's just a simple story about two toys competing to be their kid's favorite, and it has a lot of heart to it. Tom Hanks and Tim Allen work very nicely off each other, and there's a nice cast of side characters who are all very memorable. Number 11, Toy Story 4. A surprisingly good sequel since the third film wrapped up so perfectly. It feels like a natural continuation to the third film. It has as much emotion and humor as the other films. Keanu Reeves, Keegan-Michael Key, and Jordan Peele all have great characters that are absolutely hilarious, but there's a huge plot hole that drives me nuts. At the end of the third film, Andy gives up Woody to Bonnie after she promises to take care of him, and as soon as Bonnie makes Forky, she no longer cares about Woody and doesn't notice he's left behind, which seems like a huge slap in the face to Andy. Number 10, Toy Story 2, a sequel that's even better than the original. The new characters introduced in this film are all very memorable. It has even more heart and emotion than its predecessor, it is even funnier, and is just overall better in every way. Number 9, Finding Nemo, a movie that has more to say for the parents in the audience more than the kids, but the kids can certainly enjoy it. It has memorable characters, fun locations, and at its core has a very emotional, heartfelt message. Number 8, Toy Story 3, the perfect closeout to the story of Andy and his toys. Just like its predecessors, all the new characters introduced are very memorable, and it actually takes some pretty dark turns. Taking inspiration from Prison Break movies, it has one of the most intense third acts of the Toy Story movies, and at the end of the day, it's just a perfect way to say goodbye to Andy. Number 7, Monsters, Inc., a charming, clever, and creative movie. The film has a very fun world to explore with likable characters, a wildly original plot, and great plot twists, and in typical Pixar fashion, also leaves you tugging at the heartstrings. Number 6, Inside Out, an absolutely imaginative film that presents complex themes in a way that everyone can understand. The whole cast feels perfect in their role, whether that be Amy Poehler as Joy, Phyllis Smith as Sadness, Louis Black as Anger, or any of the others. Each was perfectly cast, and the way things like imagination and other ideas about the mind are presented are wildly creative, and it also has a message for everyone. Number 5, Ratatouille, a movie with an absolutely bizarre plot that somehow kind of works. It's got great comedy, great drama, wacky ideas that somehow work, and they really took the time to make you feel like you went to France. Each location is beautifully animated, and it's breathtaking. Number 4, Up, a very imaginative film that also has a lot of heavy themes and Pixar heart. There's a ton of creativity to this movie with memorable characters, a lot of emotion, and a lot of energy. Number 3, Coco. Pixar's version of the afterlife is creative and emotional. The film has a lot of heart, a fantastic message, and great plot twists, and I'd say it's a nearly perfect movie. But what holds it back is the plot's a little contrived in some parts. It feels like things could have wrapped up quicker and people just communicated about who was related to who. And I get why they had to make the movie long enough, but I don't know, little plot contrivances kind of irk me a little bit about this movie, though, as awesome as it is. Number 2, Incredibles. Brad Bird's absolutely fantastic superhero film that came out at a time when there weren't a lot of superhero movies, and the ones that we did get weren't very good. The film has fast-paced action, a fantastic score, a great script, and for a while was my favorite Pixar movie. But then my number 1 pick came out and dethroned it. And that movie is Soul, a movie that everybody needs to watch at least once in their life. If Coco is about life after death, this is about life before life, with uplifting messages about your purpose in life, how you should treat others, and why life is worth living no matter how bad it gets. It doesn't matter if you're a religious person or not, this movie has something for everyone. It's got fantastic animation, a fantastic score, is very creative, and it's just an all-around feel-good movie, so it comes in at number 1. We're going to show you a ranking of the Pixar films, and I will see you next time.